Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we've got a great turnout for today's webinar, and I just want to welcome you to our first in a series for 2021, focused on access, diversity, equity, and inclusion in career and technical education and advanced technology centers, which we all are very much involved with, and hopefully you are too. Want to give a 1-minute overview of NCATC, and our 4 top strategic focus areas here on the screen are the future of work with Industry 4.0 and smart automation, coupled with work-based learning, whether it's internships, co-ops, or apprenticeships. Those are our very key top 2 areas that we focus on, coupled with competency-based education, where applied skills and knowledge with recognized industry recognized credentials and certifications are part of that mix. And last, but certainly not least, and a big focus for today in the future webinar series is adult learning opportunities in underserved and underrepresented populations, specifically in these fields or these areas of access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we partner with ACTE and a lot of other great organizations who are farther ahead in these practices and policies and best practices. And so today we're looking forward to that. Next slide before I turn it over to my colleagues. We have about 165 community and technical colleges across the nation in 41 states. The map's quite large because Hawaii, the entire state's a part of our network, and we had to stretch the map to include them. We've also got 40 strategic partners, and some of them are with us today, and one of them is a sponsor, a fairly new strategic partner by the name of Job Speaker out of San Francisco, California. We're looking forward to having them share some great content and information with you as we move forward. We also work very closely with a lot of the agencies in DC, National Science Foundation, Department of Labor, et cetera, on grants, and we do special consulting for our members as well for building advanced technology centers and polytechnics. I want to welcome Tony Neary from Haas Morris Group. She's based in Cleveland, but she also serves on the board of directors, and she'll be navigating us behind the scenes, breaking us out into 4 different rooms after our midway point, so we can discuss at a good level different areas of this topic that we can then come back and report out on before the end of the webinar. I also want to again welcome Job Speaker as our sponsor today. Without their help, we would not be able to easily put these things on at no cost to our members, ACTE members, and even non-members. So thank you for that. This will be recorded and back up on our website early next week with a little survey for all of those that attended and those that registered. And there will be a Q&A along the way. If you have a question, just type it into the chat box down below, and Tony will navigate those to the facilitators of the breakout rooms as well as the speakers as well. Again, turn off your cameras and mics unless you're speaking. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Lewis, who is the president of our board this year. Chris hails from Rock Valley College in Rockford, Illinois. His previous experience is Director of Supply Diversity in Alabama. And then he did that for about 7 years and then moved on to a startup for energy, green energy in the state, before moving on to the MEP network of Alabama, and then finding his way to Illinois the last couple of years as Vice President of Workforce Development. Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you to share some great words of wisdom on access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thanks for being with us, everyone. And thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Craig. It is a pleasure to be here. And from the board of directors from NCATC, we're honored to be able to really engage in this conversation. It is a needed conversation that many times when we actually try to broach it, we can sometimes become uncomfortable. But we know that as we have seen some things unfold in front of us nationally over the last past year, that it is an area that we really need to really address because it impacts us, particularly in education. You know, I've always learned from the private sector, which Craig alluded to, is that people buy from those who they know, like, and trust. Our students, our other partners, they come to us based on a lot of times trust. And I think right now, as we are engaging in some wonderful opportunities for advanced manufacturing and training in ATC centers, but one of the things that we are still lagging behind on is trying to make sure that we can recruit people that are willing to learn these new and exciting, again, new skills. We know that our employers are sharing with us that there's a tremendous skills gap that they are struggling with a workforce that's beginning to age out. So how do we address that? We know that we have a tremendous opportunity when we look at diversity, access, and inclusion, but how do we do it? You know, one of the things I like to look at is, why is this important, number one, to me? As Craig alluded to, I was a diversity manager for a Fortune 500 company. I am a product of Birmingham, Alabama. I have had the pleasure of serving on the board of several national organizations for diversity. I was the president and CEO of a state-run organization dealing with diversity, working with Fortune 500 companies. I've had the privilege of also being an interim president at a historically Black college and university, and now at a PWI as a vice president of workforce development. The struggles are still very similar. And when I look at some of the facts as well, we know that today that the wealth gap, when you look at ethnicities, is actually wider today than it was in the 60s. While Blacks and Hispanics in particular, while their wealth has grown, it has still been far disproportionate to, again, the white community. And we talk about education, but education is also in regards to access, inclusion, and diversity, is something that is still met with some bit of trepidation, because the debt that is associated with improving one's life has not seen a return on investment in underserved communities. In the Black community alone, the cost of outstanding educational debt is 42%. In the white community, it is 28%. And even at some of the highest levels, still the earning disparities have to be discussed. My daughter herself right now is gravitating to medical school. But the reality, even for her, is that for her peers, when she comes out, is that a white male would make $253,042 on average per year. A Black male who is doing the exact same thing will make $188,230. A white female, $163,224. And a Black female who is in the same peer group will make $152,784. These kind of disparities erode some of the trust that we need to begin to create the access, inclusion, recruitment, and retention for individuals to be able to enter into the CTE realm. Silence for us can no longer be an option. We have to be able to have a conversation around what can be done to make sure that people feel welcome and that there is a degree of trust that they feel that they too can succeed. We're here at Rock Valley College right now working with a workforce equity initiative grant because of the historic disparities that have existed not only in Rockford, but in Illinois for African Americans, where they have ranked dead last in everything that matters: housing, unemployment, healthcare, and education. There are funds that are being put in place so that we now can help them to navigate the waters in areas that provide short-term training for industry-recognized certificates in jobs that pay at least 30% above the regional living wage. We provide everything from free tuition, childcare, transportation, and additional wraparound services that include workforce stipends. But even with that, there is still many decades of systemic racism that we are still having to overcome that are problematic for the outcomes. But yet and still, we are still working to make a difference. And so this conversation today, this is our safe zone. We want you to feel comfortable in trying to have a conversation that can have an impact to your community, have an impact to your institution, and have an impact to our global society. And so with that, I'm excited to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Leanne Wilson. Leanne has served as the Executive Director of the Association for Career and Technical Education since 2013. And she has been with the association since 2005. Leanne holds a deep appreciation for the work that America's career and technical education professionals perform each and every day to equip their students with the technical, academic, and employability skills they will need for college and career success. She has strived to raise awareness of CTE among policymakers and the public. We welcome you, Leanne.
Thank you so much, Chris. What an honor it is to join everyone today. And I first want to thank Craig, Chris, and Tony, everyone at Ncatc for this wonderful opportunity. Well, I want to start by sharing a little bit of a story and some history as to how ACTE came to focus on, we call it IAED, as you can see from my background, issues. And obviously, it's been an interesting journey, but I appreciated Chris's comments very much about a safe space, because as we've gone through the years discussing these topics, it's been critically important that we, do it in a respectful way. And we're just so excited to share lessons learned that can hopefully be of help. We say, we're so proud to host a lot of the information that I'm discussing today on our website, so it's free and accessible to everyone, so that maybe you feel if you're first starting your journey into this focus area, that maybe you're not starting from scratch, and hopefully we can be helpful in some way. So Trey, if you could go to the next slide, please. Before I get into ACTE's statement, I did want to share again a little bit of history. Back in 2017, our public policy department had been working on creating a high quality CTE framework. And while they were doing research into putting that together, one of the 12 elements of that high quality CTE framework was access and equity. So again, that was back in 2017. And I'm just going to read you a couple of subheadings under that element. The CTE program of study is promoted to all potential participants and, as appropriate, their parents, guardians, in a manner that is free from bias, inclusive, and non-discriminatory. Also, appropriate actions are taken to eliminate barriers to extended learning experiences, such as work-based learning, CTSO participation, and post-secondary credit attainment for all students, including special populations. Again, access and equity back in 2017 was seen to be a critically important element in any high-quality CTE program. So about a year after that, our board was having discussions, and one of the key elements to that discussion was, how can we begin to really wrap our arms around this focus and make sure that it has more prominence because of its importance to our CTE programs. So the board took the initiative to create a diversity task force. And at the time, the diversity task force came up with some wonderful recommendations. And they worked for almost a year. And so the board adopted pretty much all of their recommendations, and that's what we've been working on since that time. During one of those discussions, the board felt it was important that we ourselves as an organization, although we obviously have anti-discrimination policies and other related policies already in place, to just show our commitment as an organization, we felt that we needed to come up with a statement. So here it is. ACTE promotes high quality CTE programs for diverse audiences. We continue to build an inclusive culture that encourages, supports, and celebrates the diversity of the CTE community. We are committed to equity, access, inclusion, and diversity throughout our organization. And since adopting that statement, we have tried to live up to that expectation, which is the big one. But, we've heard that everyone, again, who has refocused their efforts around these areas, it really is starting to just inherently bake it into everything you do. It just becomes a natural part of your discussions, your strategic plan, anything that's going on in your institutions. And so, but we also recognize that this was only a first step or maybe a second step. But there was much more work to be done. So I'm going to share with you today how far we've come. And again, hopefully that can be helpful to you. Some of the recommendations that came out of that diversity task force was to also incorporate a column in our Techniques magazine, which some of you that are members of ACTE receive 8 issues a year. But we're certainly very proud of that publication, and it has been very well received throughout the nation. But we decided we wanted to be very intentional about including a column. So since the last Techniques cycle, which was in September of last year, we have incorporated a column. So we do solicit interest and articles for that column from our communities. And so that has started off in a great way. Also, they were asking, certainly our organizations are resources for many of our members and others in the CTE community. So they were interested in us creating a specific web page that had some resources where people could say, hey, anyone working in this area might benefit from additional resources. So we're trying to fill that, kind of a slow start, but anybody that lets us know about something, we're certain to put that up there as quickly as we can. And down there, you can see the exact web page on acteonline.org. It's just /IAED. Also, they were saying, we heard from our field that they were interested in speakers, who can talk to us about these topics and have easy access. Many of our ACTE obviously has state ACTEs in all states. And, just looking for national speakers or speakers that were in their areas that they could have quick access to. And also the Diversity Task Force recommendation was to also develop an advisory group. And as part of that advisory group, it was, we said, well, it wouldn't be inclusive if we limited it. So what we did was we opened it up to really anyone who wants to be involved. And we really look to that group for a lot of different things, including these writers for columns, people that are interested in speaking themselves, obviously contributing to help us with resources on our website. So we have about, I guess it's been maybe a year or so. We're inching up to 200 so far that have volunteered to be a part of that advisory group. And it's a simple sign up on that web page, the IAED web page. And it's just, you put in, I think it's just your email address, and there you are. You'll start receiving newsletters as well as any communications out to let you know, hey, we have something that's come up. We're looking for people with expertise in these particular areas, and it has worked phenomenally well so far. So I'd encourage all of you, if you do have interest, to please join that advisory group. It's growing every day. Trey, next slide, please. So another recommendation from the Diversity Task Force that the board implemented was the creation of a mentorship program. And the primary reason behind this was because we realized while we could take these initiatives inside and very internally focused, and also start to share resources, was that enough to affect change? And so we thought there are a lot of institutions that may not know how to tackle these issues as well. Like we all said, we're learning from each other, best practices we can take, things that we can implement. So when we created this mentorship program, again, because it's our first time, so we had no idea what kind of interest we would get or who would sign up. But I'm very excited to say we have over 70 participating in our first cohort. So we opened Mentee applications last November, Mentor applications last September, and they started their program of work during our virtual vision that was held in just this past December. So it was the first time the mentors and the mentees met each other. And, I've heard a lot of questions from the field, how did you even go about that process of pairing them, which was certainly very interesting. But like I said, we all committed to safe spaces and who we think would be good matches and understanding that we may not get the matches just perfect, but that was going to be okay for our first cohort as we again continue to educate ourselves and just take advantage of those best practices and what we learn along the way. Something else important about this program was we decided that it would be very important to have periodic check-ins just to see if we kind of start to see specific issues start to bubble to the surface that are common across all of these discussions. Because what we can do on that level, if we see specific disparities or if there's school systems in certain areas that are having similar issues, again, that's something our public policy department can work on. We can also get the word out through our membership, others that may be experiencing some similar issues. And again, we can communicate back out and again, just add to our resources and best practices. So we're hoping this continues to really grow and have a lot of power behind it, but we're going to be very in tune to the progress of those very important discussions. Next slide, please, Trey. I did want to just talk about a little bit about the goals of the program itself. So certainly to provide mentors to ACTE members interested in these topics, to encourage members interested in these topics to pursue leadership roles. So we're actually trying to encourage more IAED within ACTE itself, within our committees, our board, and that's been a key component. So I say, in a little bit of a sense, we're hoping to grow our own out of this program, but we're excited and very proud to say that. And so certainly to be able to advise existing leaders in ACTE on these issues. So we do have a social media tag that you can see there that we're happy if you utilize. And also the mentorship program was open to anyone interested in IAED. So again, we didn't want to put, we just talked about eliminating barriers. So we took an approach that we were going to have no barriers and make it as open and accessible to for everyone to participate as possible. So like I said, we'll keep you posted. I've had a lot of interest in other organizations that are, pursuing opportunities and again, kind of tracking our progress to see how this is going and things that they can learn should they decide to implement such a program. Next slide, please, Trey. So I did want to talk a little bit about the program of work for this program, only because again, it needs, it would be great to have a successful mentorship program, but you always want it to be able to permeate throughout your institutions and really the communities that you serve to have the broadest reach possible. So you'll see there, we asked that they complete 6 of the 8 activities below. And when we were developing the program, things that were important were, such as the statement that I read at the beginning of my presentation. Perhaps there are institutions that want to create a statement. again, to begin to embed that into their culture. As Chris mentioned earlier, we may have all had good intentions, certainly initially, everybody coming from a good place, but it's more visible to see, oh, they actually have a commitment. They're embedding it in the work that they do. So really trying to say, hey, maybe developing a statement for your institution, and seeing if that would be acceptable, and something they want to admit, or not admit, but just embed into their natural part of their conversation and the culture. So great activities. Like I said, I think those will change as we go through the program. But again, the goal was to really begin to broaden the reach throughout the CTE community and across institutions. So it would become, again, just more naturally a part of our discussions and communications. So time commitment, we did ask them to volunteer about 2 to 4 hours a month, and just reflect on the program experience itself. I will also share, importantly, Perkins 5 is a part of this program. And we have, if you go to that webpage I referenced earlier, you will see we pulled out the various portions of Perkins 5 related to IAED, so that those that are in the program could easily access that information, to whereas as they're going through this program, should they need to pull in elements of Perkins 5, they're able to easily do that. So we were very excited about that. I also want to mention, if you do go to that page, just out of curiosity, to see if you have someone maybe in your state or institution that's involved in the program, we do have mentor and mentee maps. So it's a map of the United States, and we have everyone's picture. I can't remember if we included what institution they're from, but certainly you can see what state they're from. And we're hoping between those two maps that there are some areas of the country that we didn't have a lot of participation this time in the first cohort. So we're going to be very intentional about trying to find people to join us from those areas for round 2 of the mentorship program. Okay, next slide, please, Trey. So another action item for the board was to find someone to advise us on these issues, an expert. And so Dr. Roger Cleveland, he is out of Kentucky. He has been advising ACTE staff and also our board on these issues. As I mentioned during our virtual vision event last December, we were fortunate to have him present on these specific topics within IAED, but we also had over 30 sessions. Again, we tried to tie our content in the virtual vision programming to those high quality CTE framework elements, of which access and equity is one of them. So again, the point is to really immerse all of our professional development and other activities across all of our activities within the organization. Next slide, please, Trey. And I mentioned earlier that we've been much more intentional in our Techniques magazine to include IAED issues. I think for our next cycle, starting in September, we're going to have a full issue on IAED. And again, we're just trying to incorporate the wonderful lessons learned that we've heard, and especially from those in our advisory group who have just been just so wonderful to work with. I highly encourage that, because I don't think any of us have all the answers, but you put a great team together, and those wonderful best practices start to bubble up pretty quickly. And And I say once everybody starts to feel more comfortable in this issue, on these issues, it has just been robust dialogue and really looking at the CTE community and how we can affect positive change. So it's just been a wonderful opportunity for ACTE, and certainly we continue to want to do more. Next slide, please, Trey. All right, so with that, in closing, I will just say thank you again for the opportunity. ACTE is looking forward to working with Ncatc in any way that we can around this subject and other subjects. I realized I did not put my slide together with my contact information, but hopefully that can be shared out afterwards. But again, please feel free to call me or email me or contact me in any way as you start to look at your institutions and maybe ask, how did we come up with those 8 programs of 8 elements in our program of work for the mentorship program? Thank you, Michael. And what those conversations were. Any way we can be helpful. And like I said, we don't promote having all of the answers. We're on this journey with everyone else. But certainly we were proud to have had perhaps the benefit of time starting on this in 2017 to have had time to grow and just like I said, immerse ourselves as an organization to committed to these issues. So again, it's been a pleasure. I'm happy to help in any way that I can to all of you, and it's been a pleasure. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tony.
Thank you so much, Leanne, and thank you for the work that you're doing with ACTE and sharing that with us. It's amazing that we're having these conversations in an open and realistic dialogue. So on behalf of the NCATC board, I would like to welcome our strategic partner, Job Speaker. We're going to be meeting with Jarlath O'Carroll today, and we want to thank them for being a sponsor so we can offer this not just for the people that are watching live, but for those that will watch on replay as well. So Jarlath, for you and your team, thank you. A little bit of information. Jarlath's background is he is the founder and CEO of Job Speaker. He's a technology entrepreneur and executive with over 20 plus years of experience with entrepreneurship, international management, innovation, and leadership experience, predominantly in the recruiting, digital media, technology, and banking sectors. He's now focused on improving access to the right education to achieve better outcomes for students and job seekers through Job Speaker. It's a tongue twister. So on behalf of our entire board, thank you so much for your sponsorship. Thank you for the work that you're already doing in this space. And I'd like to turn it over to you.
I appreciate it, Tony. Thank you very much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Craig, and the whole team and board at NCATC, plus ACTE, for pulling together this important conversation this afternoon on inclusion, access, diversity, and equity. As Tony said, I'm Jarlath O'Carroll, the CEO and founder of Job Speaker. I want to thank Chris for his great introduction to this topic today, and Leanne for your work. Your work is inspiring, and I think there's a lot of alignment between what our two organizations are looking to accomplish. Thank you, and looking forward to continue that conversation. By way of a quick introduction, I think it'd be useful to mention that Job Speaker itself was born out of a challenge. When I got laid off during the financial crisis back in 2010 is when was the genesis of Job Speaker, with the founding goal of helping everybody understand how to get from where they are today to where they want to go by increasing access and basically democratizing access to both education and the job market. But we're in a slightly different position today, even then during the financial crisis. You've already seen the definition of IADE, but what I'd like to focus on in the next few minutes here, and I will rattle through this pretty quickly, just so you know. So we have additional research, etc., that if you want to have access to, I will provide it. But what we're seeing today is there there is within the economic side of IADE, there's a sector of marginalized persons that have been particularly harder hit when it comes to jobs, earnings, and wealth. COVID-19 has actually exacerbated their plight. So how can we turn this around to make it an equal playing field and create, as one of my colleagues said, the greatest generation born out of this crisis? We believe there is a fundamental shift that we can make in both education and workforce system that can turn it around. And I'll give you a hint, it's called skills. And Chris already mentioned this up front. But the recovery so far has seen some difficulties. Most of you have heard of the K-shaped recovery. They are going up to the right as those that are in the high earnings bracket and continue to do well. But those in the bottom earning bracket are experiencing significant economic impact and are continuing to do so. So just a little bit more detail on that. High earners, there are fewer impacts and better access to quality healthcare and a better ability to stay socially distanced. Whereas in the lower earner bracket, there's basically a triple whammy or triple impact where people are seeing negative economic impacts in terms of unemployment, underemployment, worse health outcomes because of lack of access to quality healthcare, and less ability to stay socially distant overall because of their work requires direct access to people, and they can't necessarily stockpile food to stay socially distant for long periods of time. Just to show that this is an uneven impact and recovery, we have seen a slight recovery so far, but the top third we already talked about, they're doing okay. Middle third, about a 5% loss in employment overall. However, the lower third of household incomes have seen an outsized impact of 20% job losses, setting them back to Great Recession levels. But for the lowest income households, they're back to Great Depression levels of unemployment. That's back to 1932. So a significant challenge. And just to underscore that some more, some of those that work particularly in the leisure and hospitality have seen an even more outsized impact. And it's debatable whether that industry will recover. And those people in particular that are in those marginalized population that work in those industries may never recover unless we do something about it. Let's quickly look at a few immediate stats at the scale of the problem. 50% of all employees need reskilling by 2025. 40% of workers' core skills will need to change in 5 years. 35% of adults are planning to change careers if they lose their jobs. A third of those same adults believe that they will need to get additional skills or education if they lose their job. 36 million people today didn't finish their education or training and are no longer enrolled. And but the impact of having that education, that certificate or degree, is a 30% lift in even a basic wage. Lastly, to put it even more in focus, we have a big hill to climb. Just in the last year, there's been a significant drop in enrollment for first-time community college students, and in particular, a 28% drop in first-time Black, Hispanic, and Native American first-year students. So the continued march towards an even more kind of divergent K-shaped economy cannot be the result of this pandemic. How do we create a more equitable future for all? How do we reverse that K and change it around? Let's ensure we have access to skill-based education for all marginalized people based on customized pathways that suit your communities, fit into your communities, and use skills-based hiring practices as a means to reduce bias in the hiring process. Job Speakers platform helps individual students get on a path based on their interests and skills, help see the benefit of those skills, help retain and learn those skills and articulate those skills to waiting employers and match them to those opportunities, whether it be mentoring, like Leanne talked about, work-based learning, like Chris mentioned, and jobs, and help them see the future for themselves and see themselves in those roles. Our platform is made up of lots of different pieces that helps the student on that continuum to help provide equal access, increase supports, and better outcomes overall. And in particular, what we do is we provide the pieces of the puzzle that make it easier for the student to see themselves in those roles in the future, help them give them the guidance. And Chris mentioned the extra supports to help them be retained in that education to get to that job, help them see the benefits of that job in terms of labor market and jobs availability. On the institution side, helping with mentoring and work-based learning to show them access and what that means for them. And then on the employer side, helping reduce bias and help the employers see the wealth of candidates that's available out there across your communities. And we work across your community with all the different entities as peers within your community in order to shift that student, that job seeker on the left to be an employee on the right. By creating a skills transcript that's based off of the education that enables each student to present themselves and their skills to employers in a non-biased way. We work with you to create those work-based learning experiences. Again, I think it was Chris that mentioned earlier, in certain industries, there's a lot of population of those industries that are aging out. Like for example, let's pick welding. There's plenty of jobs in welding today, and people need to be able to see themselves in those roles. So allowing access, be able to see themselves fit into those roles is an important part of how you continue that, help that student see their path and see and help them transition from where they are today into those roles and provide a future. So our platform helps support all those conversations and essentially helps that student see their path into employment and towards a lifetime of a more fulfilling career. I'm going to close with that. I know I went through that really, really quickly. I'm happy to continue the conversation with anybody that wants to explore some more. And I've included in the back a list of resources that we use to pull that information today. So like I said, I'm happy to continue the conversation as needed. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jarlath. I think it just illuminates, I saw a comment come through about the data. It illuminates the work that we have to do, but it's so fantastic that we're shining a light on this and we're having conversations, which opens us up for our next portion of the meeting. You're going to be moved into one of 4 breakout rooms, and the conversations are going to revolve all around the topics that we're really discussing today with IAED or ADEI, whatever you want to call it. There's work to be done and we're here to do it. So I'm going to push the button and push everybody into 4 rooms. We're going to break out for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to have a report out from each of those 4 rooms. In the recording, each of these rooms will be recorded. We're going to be able to go back. You can actually participate and kind of watch those later. So when we come back, room 1 will be Terry Sandu. She'll report out on that room first. Room 2 will be Kathy Wrench, both from the NCATC board. And then from the team at ACTE, Michael Connett will do a readout for room 3, and Leanne Wilson will do a readout for room 4. So stay tuned. We're going to put you out. You'll get a 2-minute warning before your group ends, and then we'll all come back here to wrap up. So we're excited to be a part of the conversation for you and to help you find actionable items to grow and change your communities as well. All right, perfect. Everybody is rejoining us. So we're going to give it just another minute, and then I'm going to ask Terry Sandu to go ahead and provide a report out for room 1. It was hard. We were just starting to get the conversation going in our room, so it was a little hard to leave. But I would like to turn it over for Terry for a readout for your room, please.
Yeah, same thing. These are big topics. And so, but I would say some of the key things are that we talked about are the importance of people seeing themselves in these programs. So things like role model speakers, the importance of connecting with our advisors or career counselors to make sure that they don't have implicit bias when like example of if a female comes to campus not quite sure what she wants to do, how to make sure that she is encouraged to consider those non-traditional fields. One of our colleagues has actually launched an implicit bias institute for faculty. So that's been a really interesting strategy. Another colleague talked about affinity groups that they are either organizing in partnership with professional organizations like the Society of Women Engineers and or creating themselves on their campus. So just a lot going on, but the challenge is ongoing. We started to have some discussion around how to support student success and completion, because ultimately all of these needs and issues tie directly back to this diversity and equity conversation. Mark, were there any highlights that you captured that you think I missed? Great,
Hey,
thank
Terry,
you.
it's Craig. Mark had to go to another meeting, but I took over, and I think the couple questions that came in and we couldn't cover at the end were, are there new initiatives that are innovative strategies for colleges implementing this? And you've shared a few, and we'll hear more. But one of them was the ROI, or the actual one of the questions I think that we didn't get to was we'd love to see some data on strategies that are working, especially in retention and persistence. And that came from Shana at the Machinist Institute in Washington. So obviously we're capturing all the comments that came in our chats and our questions, as well as what we've captured on, as Terry was reporting out, for all the rooms. And this is the first of many webinars that we'll have on this topic throughout 2021. So that was my highlight there. I think data and innovative practices are the top two that came to my mind. Terry, thank you for your help on this.
Sure, thank you. And I would be remiss to not do a plug that in Ohio, we are working on some strategies specifically for outreach to women as well. And I will put my contact information in the chat box if anyone is interested in following up. It is an outreach tool that we are going to be piloting across a number of sites in Ohio in 2021. Thank you.
Fantastic. Next up, we have Kathy Wrench for room number 2.
Hi, everybody. We had a great discussion on retention. Tony, I think we lost 38 seconds, so I thought we had more time before we got whisked away. But we had a really great discussion, and let me talk to you about just some of the highlights, and I'm going to ask Craig Lamb to fill in if I miss anything. One of the first topics, so we were talking about how we are doing the strategies we're putting in place to help retain diverse students. And one of the first couple of comments from a couple of our different participants was around ways that they are actually bringing CTE content to non-CTE classes. One of the first examples was actually an example of bringing artificial intelligence and blockchain technology content to some business related programming in logistics and supply chain management, trying to get exposure, kind of bring some of this technology out to where there may be other students who have interest that they were unaware of, didn't even know that these kinds of opportunities existed. Similar to that, we also heard, I'm sorry, I don't have everyone's names attached to this. We also heard about schools that have purchased virtual welders and are bringing those virtual welders to other classes to let students just experience the technology, get kind of excited about that. But with the underlying goal, objective being trying to expose people to some opportunities they may not have known about. Around retention, we also heard about a CTE mentoring program that is focused specifically on pairing students with people in their field or discipline of study. And in particular, that school has got a program focused on men, Brothers and Keepers, and also a separate program that's focused around women, but both with the intention of connecting students with mentors in the field who can help guide coursework that they select and work-based learning opportunities that may be out there and that kind of thing. We heard quite a bit from one of our colleagues at Central Piedmont around the student success coach model. And then finally from a colleague at Eastman, the chemical company, this gentleman actually is the person who directs their apprenticeship program, talked quite a bit about the one-on-one relationships he's developed for both recruitment and for pulling students in, even in their first or second semesters, to explore the field and also to pull them into jobs, which would allow for them to not only explore the field, but perhaps be retained while they can work and go to school at the same time. Craig, did I miss anything? Craig,
You did not. A+.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
It's a great
perfect.
conversation.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And then Michael Connett from ACTE will be up next to give a readout from room number 3.
Hi, thanks, Tony. Thanks so much. Really a great conversation. As we heard, it took just a couple seconds to get everyone warmed up. Yeah, but thanks to Chris Lewis. He really got us started. I would boil down the comments to really 2 subjects. One would be commitment by the institution, commitment by the individuals, and a commitment to serve. And challenges for the students as well as challenges to the institutions. As far as commitment goes, Chris was talking about his institution is fortunate to have diversity among its senior leadership. Certainly Chris and a new president there are leading the way and opening up the dialogue to give modeling. The other part of the commitment that Chris shared that they've really creatively had a bus donated to them that they're going to retrofit out to be a mobile classroom to provide outreach programs around the community into areas that haven't historically had a large engagement with the institution. Some of the other things that we heard around commitment were creation of a cultural competency program down at Bluegrass Community College that I thought was really a unique model. And then as far as the challenges go, I had some really good intel. We were talking with Chris and Holly from Bluegrass, and it was Tiffany and Holly from Bluegrass. They were talking about that cultural competency program and how it provides incentives to get the staff and the faculty engaged in addressing the challenges that they have to adopt IAD in their classrooms. Chris also shared an example when he was, working at the state level, how they learned from a neighboring institution to take a small pot of money and turn it into a set of support funds for students that might have challenges in making it to classes or continuing their studies. I think he made the statement that something as small as a $500 emergency grant to a student can make or break that student's success in continuing throughout the program. Oftentimes it's $300-400 that the student is faced with some emergent crisis that if they aren't able to address it, they're going to have to drop out or they might preclude joining a program. So dealing with those challenges is a big part of how you implement and to excel your IED programs. Tony, Craig, I know you were there. Anything I missed that you heard in those comments?
I think that was great feedback. Craig, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think it was one of the best. And again, the data, a lot of people are looking for the return on investment. That's kind of a nebulous thing. I think it's such a human trait that we need to really focus more on. And I think the ROI will become when we all feel better about the world in general. So that's a tough one to do, but we'll keep our nose to the grindstone, as they say, and look for data and look for ROI with all of our partners as well. But that was a great recap, Michael. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And then the readout from room 4 was we honestly had a couple of minutes of awkward silence of Leanne and I trying to fill space, trying to get the conversation started, but it turned into really a conversation of So many programs do not understand how to start the outreach to reach a larger audience and a more diverse audience. But then they run into barriers and obstacles like transportation, access to the classroom or labs, as well as some of the issues with like admittance testing or some aptitude tests or different programs that you may have that can hinder people from actually being enrolled in your program. That and the stigma of careers in manufacturing or career in technical education are still there, that parents do not realize this is a fantastic pathway and a great viable career opportunity for their student to pursue. So those were the main topics that we had kind of covered, but I think it shows that we have a bigger conversation, and that will continue through the next coming webinars that we're going to have as well. So I would like to turn it over at this point to our fearless leader, Craig Ncatc, and for him to start our wrap up of the session. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Tony, for all of your navigation and expertise in all that we're doing today and beyond. I appreciate your connecting us early on with ACTE last year when we were dreaming up how could we address this without reinventing any wheels. So that's been great. I want to thank Leanne Wilson and Michael Conant from ACTE for bringing that expertise to our first webinar today, and all of you that stuck with us through. We had over 150 people registered, and I think at least three quarters of those in attendance today. So thank you for that. I want to thank Terry Sandu, Craig Lamb, Tim Baber, Kathy Wrench, and Tony Neary again for, and Hope Cotner, who pinch hitted for Tim Baber, who couldn't be in today from California, for taking notes and reporting out and navigating all of the folks throughout the breakout rooms. Just to be aware, we have recorded everything, both the session that we're in now, the full session, and the breakout rooms, and we'll assemble those with the help of Cord. And I do want to thank Cord for being our host partner on this webinar today. And doing that, we will be sending out a brief, questionnaire for all of you, a survey next week for what we did well, what we could do better in the future for these type of webinars. And attached to that will be a link, of course, to the recording once we have that available in the next few days. But last but not least, I want to thank Jarlath O'Carroll and the great folks from Jobs Speaker, who are wonderful partners of ours, for all of you out there that didn't know of all the great work they're doing across the nation in a virtual world. Please keep in touch with that. And last but not least, we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Mark on your calendars, February 25th. That will be our next webinar in partnership with the National Skills Coalition on policy in AIDE. And that will be something that we'll do and you'll see much more of starting tomorrow on our website and our social media. So follow us. Thanks again for all of your time. Stay safe out there. And for now, have a great rest of the week. And thanks for being part of this today. That's it for now.